Hey everyone! With Chantal's rant going around about Yava's tweet, I wanted to make a video talking about shame versus responsibility and care. In Chantal's rant, right off the bat, I get the feeling that she puts a lot of morality or puts a lot of moral value based off of her food, her weight, her cleanliness, and her behavior. There was a couple times in her rant where Chantal really honed in on the insult in Yava's tweet where she said Pete's was a lazy fuck.
And guess what? You're a piece of shit for calling him a dirty fuck when we're gonna clean that shit up today, and you're still gonna be a piece of shit who does nothing but bully people online all day. Let's clean this mess, because yes, it is disgusting, but at least I don't go and fucking mental health shame people or shame them for their dirty house. Alright? So, being dirty doesn't make you a bad person, okay? Every single thing that these people claim make me or Pete's a bad person, don't. Having gonorrhea. Whatever, fucking somebody abusive. Having KFC in your drawer. Being dirty. None of those make you a bad person. Being 850 pounds. Not exercising. Doesn't make you a bad person. Having nipple clamps. Don't make you a bad person. Everybody is shitty. Everybody is shitty. Some more than others.
Considering how she's treated Pete's in the past, both on and off camera, I found it really weird that she decided to go on this huge rant, like almost sticking up for him, where she even says like he probably doesn't care. I really was confused as to why she got so upset, almost like on behalf of Pete's, as if it was a reflection of her or an extension of her own behavior that she is normalized. I feel like the aspect of morality that's tied to this conversation just goes in circles because I can never really pinpoint, is it people who are providing critique, whether or not they're adding on like insults or talking shit or just like commenting, and then Chantal responds because she feels attacked and says, well, I'm not a bad person, stop making me feel like I'm a bad person? Or is it people who are instigating it saying, you are a bad person for not being clean? And then she's responding. I get the feeling that if someone were to objectively point out their comments and say, hey, like this is not a good situation, that she would still feel as if her character is attacked on some moral level. I know in society in general that we tend to assign a lot of moralities to tasks and chores. There's been a lot of conversations I've seen online that are interesting where they say like you deserve to rest. In order to do chores, in order to take care of yourself and take care of the other loved ones in your house, if you need to rest in order to complete those tasks, like it's okay. You don't have to burn yourself out and then do a crappy job and like completely fatigue yourself and not do things in a way that makes you happy because you're gonna feel bad about it. And certainly some people do work better when they just like push through and they have the energy and they have the motivation and they get things done and then they feel accomplished and they can rest. The conversations that I've been seeing have been like, look, this is just something on your to-do list. If you need to rest in order to do it, then that's okay. You shouldn't beat yourself up about needing to rest. Don't burn yourself out. It's something that can be done like later or in the morning. Or if you need to do half of it tonight and then the rest of the laundry tomorrow, like that's something that's okay too. You don't need to feel guilty for not completing the whole thing within some weird parameter. It's so hard to not be like, well, you should feel bad as a motivator, because then a lot of people will say like feeling bad doesn't motivate you properly. It doesn't form proper habit. It's just interesting when you think about like, okay, why do we feel that it is proper to shame someone? Is it because we are assigning morality to something when there shouldn't be? But then if like someone's impacting others that are helpless, like if animals are in this situation, you can objectively point out that something is wrong without the shaming. But it's really hard to get rid of that emotion, I think, when it's so intrinsic to that conversation. Let's keep going. I was listening to It's Mia Time and he had a coffee, so I had a coffee, and I usually don't have this much coffee. So all that being said, I really feel like Chantal clings to this aspect of morality when it comes to this topic, the heavy judgment feeling, instead of looking any feedback that she might receive objectively. Hopefully the feedback is given to her objectively, but I know that that's not the case often. In the car, she was talking about how like, oh, there's societal standards for waking up at 7 a.m. and why is it like that?
This is my lunch. But when you wake up at 12, I mean, you know. Why do we have societal standards? Like people getting up in the morning and people looking down on people who get up at noon when so many people are not morning people. Like, how is that a norm if there's so many people that are not the norm?
In the same way that she talks about like eating kale all the time. I don't know, she always starts out with this whole like anti-societal structures, like we need to question and go against the grain, and it's okay to question why things are the way they are, but then she doesn't really stick it to the man or like follow through with it in a really like significant way, because she just ends up in situations that are negative to herself and potentially others around her. Anyways, I feel like a lot of people can recognize like, okay, if you want to talk about having a non-traditional structure in your work life, like it's not really that unheard of now. It's just that a lot of people who do engage in that are still productive in ways that are beneficial to them. Whenever she gets called out on stuff though, it's interesting that it immediately goes to like, well, everyone's shitty. Everyone's the same. Everyone's a bad person, which kind of affirms that she's saying, well, yes, I do engage in shitty things and I do crappy things. She just doesn't make that connection that other people's crappy behavior doesn't negate her own. So like just because other people might also be lazy or unstructured or have mental health issues or have addictions to fast food, it doesn't mean that a lot of these observations are wrong. When she focuses a lot on what she perceives to be moral judgments, and like sometimes they are, sometimes people are shaming her and insulting her, it makes me wonder how highly she does think of herself. Like, does she think this behavior is okay? Because I feel like if you're secure in your own actions and your belief, then you wouldn't come across as very insecure. But then again, just because someone is honest or talking openly about a detrimental behavior or habit that they have that they know they should change or say that they want to change, like if Chantal says, oh, I don't like that I'm lazy, I don't want to be lazy, I want to be productive, like talking about it doesn't really mean anything unless there's actions.
I'm pretty proud of my filthy living. No, I'm not. I don't like living this way. I know I make jokes and everything, but I don't live this way because I fucking love it. You know? Like, I don't. I just run the water to make it look like I wash my hands.
At the end of the day though, I think pointing the finger to like society in general and like other people and larger communities is, you know, just deflecting. It's like moving the point further and further away from what the original issue was. And it makes it so you have this litmus of like who can and can't comment on certain things, which like if you only want to take on specific feedback from a certain amount of people, you can change that criteria all the time. That's how you end up surrounded by like yes men. I've seen her do this kind of thing before regarding her health and her wellness, where she'll say like, well, you are fat so you can't comment on my weight, or you are no longer fat so you can't comment on my weight, or you never were fat so you can't comment on my weight. I remember mentioning in my very first video about Chantal that Timbit's living situation was not good, and I remember getting flooded with so many people who were like, Timbit has feline leukemia, and it's like, yes, but there's a vaccine I'm pretty sure that you can get for the other cats. But from the very beginning though, I think a lot of us noticed that it was kind of a red flag that the other two cats not only had the full run of the house, but they also had access to the balcony. And like no one's denying that there is that situation with the feline leukemia, but again, a lot of us have maintained and noticed that ever since they moved in together into that apartment, those cats could objectively be treated better or have better living conditions. If you wanted to give the feedback to Pete about Timbit with the same severity but without the insult, I wonder, would it have gotten this much attention? Do you think that Chantal would have jumped on that comment if there wasn't that insult thrown in at the end? Or if it came from a different YouTuber, like if it came from a random commenter or just a different reaction channel that she didn't really know, or one that she claims that she likes? Do you think that she would have received it the same way when it wasn't even directed to her? I just wonder like what specifically was her issue. Was it because it came from Yaba? Was it because there was an insult directed at Pete? Because as I said, we've seen lots of comments addressing this stuff over the past few months. If a lot of people said, hey Pete, maybe you can purchase like a mat instead of a cardboard box, something that's specifically for animals that you can like wipe down, or maybe you should buy a little handheld vacuum that you can keep in your room for easier cleaning. It'll just take 5-10 minutes. You know, going forward, here are some very specific actionable solutions for you. Would it have gone anywhere? I just sometimes get the feeling that a lot of people in this community only pay attention to feedback if it's like very dramatic and it's full of insults and judgment, and they don't really pay attention to anything that's given like objectively or with genuine development in mind. Pete's did say that he cleaned up after posting that video, and we can see in his latest live that the window was open, which was pretty refreshing to see compared to Chantal's like super dark room all the time. But I'm not sure if it was due to the backlash or him just recognizing that it needs to be cleaned. You'd think that he would have done that before filming if it's something that he regularly does, because a lot of us consider YouTube to be like a public, you know, showing the public some more intimate things. That being said though, his biggest influence into what is perceived as acceptable to put on YouTube is Chantal. So I guess we have to consider that as well. So Chantal laughs about poop being left on the floor for an hour. And I'm sure that we all remember the time when there was poop allegedly left, I think it was at the bottom of the stairs, for like a really extended period of time by both of them. I know that constantly hearing and talking about shaming and moral and hypocritical talking points makes us think that we're not able to use the terminology or talk about things that are considered normal or abnormal or typical or atypical. But I think Chantal really relies on these concepts of shaming and really trying to steer away from any discussion of what's considered normal to explain away behaviors that are objectively not normal for two able-bodied people who live in an apartment and who are caring for pets. I mean, even hygienically, like if you know that there is poop on the ground by an animal in your living space, it is not normal to leave it there for over an hour.
Cats have shit on the floor before, yeah, but I pick it up. You know, maybe sometimes it takes me like an hour or something, but I mean,
a typical reaction would be to pick it up and get rid of it as soon as you become aware of it. And I think we should feel comfortable in saying that leaving poop that you know about from an animal on the ground for over an hour and laughing about it, like thinking that that's a normal thing to do, is a red flag in that person's thought processes. Not necessarily saying that they're a bad person, but if that's the case, it's something that needs to be recognized and identified. Like, why do you think that's normal behavior? Whether it's due to laziness or mental health or both. I know that's not mutually exclusive, but I don't want us to be afraid of saying that is not typical behavior and there's a reason for that, because we can recognize that without shaming someone. Laziness on its own is usually considered an insult. Typically it's used as a pejorative for someone's character. If someone doesn't want to put the effort into doing something, we describe that as laziness. It's seen as something that is meant to be overcome. But a lot of the times we do try to determine where that laziness stems from. Does that person literally just not want to do things and just not want to move? Or is there an underlying health condition? I mean, sloth is like one of the 7 deadly sins, right? So it's not far-fetched to see why we have such a moral component tied to the concept of laziness. Because if we're able to say, oh, well, that person is lethargic due to an underlying health condition, that's something that they can tangibly try to fix and work on. But even if someone has an explanation for their laziness or lethargy, we still can understand that if it's affecting you or others in a detrimental way, whatever the explanation is still not a good excuse to continue that behavior. Do they have a mental health issue? Do they have anxiety? Do they have an iron and B12 deficiency? Were they just literally never taught how to clean or how to care for themselves or how to care for animals? No matter what the explanation is, it kind of all leads to the same result and the goal of change needing to be made, regardless of the cause.
but yeah, people are messy. What can I say? No, for real. You don't know, like Pete's, like, I know it's not really an excuse or whatever. Well, it is. Like, he's just got really bad mental health too, and you don't know what people are going through. You know, it's like people on Hoarders. I don't watch that and go, oh, these people are fucking nasty. Obviously, they have like really bad mental problems, you know?
Chantal's insistence on using mental health as an explanation for her and Pete's living situation, I don't think is normalizing the effects of mental health or taking away stigma the way that she thinks it is. I don't think she highlights or shows the way that she lives as a way to like garner compassion or understanding about, again, the effects of mental illness, because I don't think it's something that she actively tries to work on. I think she gets called out, feels an intense judgment, like a moral judgment on her character, and lashes out, or like some outside force triggers her, like animal services coming over, an inspection, like someone unexpected coming to the house that isn't normally there.
We have animal protection services coming this week, so I want to make sure like everything is really, really clean. Even though they might see this. You're just cleaning for us? They just want to like come in and make sure that the cat, like people were saying that the cats are like left for days on end without food and water, and there's cat shit everywhere. The cats have shit on the floor before, yeah, but I pick it up. You know, maybe sometimes it takes me like an hour or something, but
puts on a show being very performative about doing the good thing and cleaning, and then goes back into the same habit cycle. But she gets angry about this topic as if she's championing for those who suffer from mental health issues. Truly addressing your situation isn't just perpetually staying stagnant in it. Only addressing it when you're prompted isn't beneficial for you or the community that you're trying to claim. And then unfortunately what we see is people will start to question the legitimacy of her mental health claim. They'll start to question the impact and the severity, both with her and now Pete's, because they'll say, oh, well, you're able to do other things. I think DC Media Girl referenced someone else saying, people will start to say, well, oh, if you can do other things, like why is it that your mental health only affects you doing things regarding like your hygiene and your laundry and taking care of your animals? So then when she jokes about being lazy and says, well, other people are lazy too, that's where it's really confusing for the audience. These are all things that we as a society identify as like daily or weekly activities that are important for our well-being. Poor hygiene can absolutely be a sign of poor mental health. And there is a resounding recognition of the correlation between poor mental health and a lack of cleanliness.
They don't realize that mental health exists. They don't mental health problems like.
But instead of using mental health as an excuse for your living situation and an explanation for why it stays dirty and as a shield against all judgment, it should be a sign that like this is an issue that needs attention. The dirt and clutter is bad for not only your mental health but also your physical health. Like she has issues with her lungs. Yeah, she has asthma, she needs a puffer. And to Chantal's point and the overall concept of shaming someone, like yeah, we can say that shaming someone and insulting them to their core and their character is not good. But again, it's just frustrating when she continuously only addresses the insults and the shame and completely ignores people expressing legitimate concerns. I think the bigger issue is that even if someone were to say that in a truthful way, in an objective, kind way, in a way that doesn't have any insults or shame, she would still feel guilt. Calling someone out isn't the same thing as shaming someone, and it doesn't always have the intention of guilt tripping them. Like, okay, going off the example earlier, if we were to say, hey, Chantal, maybe you should keep a little trash can in your room so that way as soon as it gets filled up, you empty it. There's no shaming or insults in that bit of feedback. The impact of that comment is not to make her feel guilty, but if she feels guilt whenever anything is addressed, then that's an even bigger issue. I can see all the things that go inside the umbrella of like shaming someone, like dehumanizing language, insults, nitpicking, not letting things go. But no matter how much I say, oh, we can provide objective feedback, and if she feels guilty, that's something that she has to unpack and deal with. No matter how much I say that, it doesn't change the fact that so much of what happens in this community is coupled with and tied with the insults. But I think we've even seen this sometimes with Amber Lynn, where it's like they will interpret any comment, regardless of how it's worded or how it's provided, as something that's an attack and something that they immediately feel guilty about just because it's brought to light, and then it just spirals into this huge dramas. If I remember correctly, Chantal is in therapy finally, so hopefully she can work on that. As another example, someone said, oh, do you think you have ADHD? And she mentioned Vyvanse and how she doesn't really like that stimulated feeling. And she jokes that she prefers edibles. In the past, a lot of people have pointed out that her edible usage is beyond what a lot of us consider like for medical reasons. Not that there's anything wrong with using edibles for recreational purpose, but if she's saying she's using it for her well-being and for her health, it just speaks to her not wanting to experience any form of judgment, and how she is really quick to use these speaking points that are based around wellness and health to normalize her behavior that a lot of people can say, hey, like you're literally passing out on camera, like you're using way too much, and they're expressing concern. I feel like she thinks that that's her like safe way out, is like, well, you can't say anything because it's for my health. The thing is, there are so many people who recognize that like if you do have something that is not managed, it's not something to feel guilty about or shame about. It's something that you need to be able to take control of and to learn the tools so that you can manage these effects. The concept of normalization that she keeps like referring to or is adjacent to in her mind is regarding destigmatizing these things, learning how to manage it, getting the tools on how to manage the symptoms, and not shaming people to the point where they feel like they can't ask for help. Recognizing that this is something that impacts you and others, and it's okay to talk about it and try to figure out how to change it. The disconnect is where she thinks the normalization of it is, how dare you point this out? How dare you try to shame me for it? I'm just gonna continue doing what I wanna do. And then we end up in this never-ending merry-go-round and circle of insults back and forth and drama back and forth, and Chantal insulting someone and then someone doing it back to her, and then no one ever gets anywhere. I really did enjoy Yaba's live this morning. I will link it down below if any of you haven't seen it. I appreciate that Yaba tends to keep it real, but as usual, I'd love to know your thoughts. Where do you draw the line between commentary and feedback versus shaming? Do you think that constructive criticism from people within this community get drowned out by all the insults and the shaming? Do you think that Chantal potentially feels guilty even if the commentary is given without insults and shame? And what do you think about Pete's cleaning up the area afterwards? Do you think that there was some potential like positive impact from the comments? Because the comments that I see in his videos, I think are a lot more kind than some others that I've seen elsewhere in some other reaction channels. Anyways, let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and wherever you're in the world, I hope you're having a beautiful day. Bye.